Here's the 30-second lesson on what legends know. Never practice nunchucks in a crowded room. Never eat chole before a road trip. Always take your shirt off before you iron it. Don't take a call near a swimming pool. And don't forget, saving is not investing. Legends don't just save, they invest in mutual funds. Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
As we know, there's been some thawing, in fact, a substantive level of thawing of the situation on the India-China line of actual control, more specifically in Eastern Ladakh, Southern Ladakh area, but also all across the line of actual control, because there are many friction points, particularly on the eastern side, or what we might call the northeastern side as well. Now, that happened in third week October. After that, something else has happened now, which looks even more significant, which is that one, the meeting of the special representatives of the two sides in 2003, when Atal Bihari Vajpayee and his Chinese counterpart, the Chinese premier then Wen Jiabao, who had just taken over, they had met. They had decided to set up a mechanism whereby each side will appoint a special representative to carry forward negotiations and talks on the border, aiming for a final border settlement. So both sides found somebody at a very high level. So Chinese had Dai Bianguo, India had Brijesh Mishra to begin with, and then as the government changed in India, UPA came in. Then it became MK Narayanan. So those talks have been going on. And you know what? While I explain this complicated and very significant turn in India-China relations, stay with me, because as this section ends, I will also introduce you to a very special guest with a very important message. What took place in Beijing this week was the 23rd meeting of special representatives. Now, if you go back to 2005, for example, right, this was the 23rd meeting, but the first after 5 years, which means between 2005 and 2019, there had been 22 meetings. For 5 years, there was no meeting. So we were meeting, these special reps were meeting very frequently earlier. They're working with the full authority of the cabinet and their national chief executives, in India's case, the prime minister, in China's case, the president. But for 5 years, these two had not met formally in this structure. They had met otherwise at other multilateral conferences, but formally at this structure, they met for the first time in 5 years, and that is very significant because 5 years back, it is almost 5 years back, that this trouble in Eastern Ladakh started. Now, Ajit Doval is the Indian representative. On the Chinese side is Wang Yi. Wang Yi is a member of the CPC Central Committee. He is also state councillor and also director of the Central Foreign Affairs Office, or foreign minister. So these two met in Beijing, after which Ajit Doval also called on the vice president of China. Now, what is the result of this meeting? It's very significant. Now, it so happens that the Indian readout of this is actually just a couple of platitudes. It's very cautious. It does not say anything specific. That could be a function of two things. One, simply because Parliament is in session right now, so it would cause a big political controversy in India if the MEA or Government of India at any level issued a detailed statement about these talks without first placing it on Parliament. And you know what's happening in Parliament right now. Parliament right now is dhakka mukki, who hit whom, or did somebody hit somebody or not. So all this tamasha is going on in Parliament. So Indian readout is actually very general and very platitudinous. The wisdom we get in this case is from the Chinese side. So Chinese side has said that there are 6 points on which understanding has been arrived at. Now, Indian side can say that, look, this is not our readout, this is the Chinese side, but Indian side is not contradicting the Chinese, at least not yet. Also, if I read this, I don't see what is it that the Indian side, that our side would find inconvenient or uncomfortable. Now, what are these 6 points? I will not go into all 6. You will see this on your screens. This readout is very short. It is just a page and a little bit more, just about 8 paras. And there are 6 points, and 6 points, some of these are again general or platitudinous. Both sides positively evaluated the solution reached between two countries on border issues, reiterated that the implementation work should continue and believe that the border issue should be properly handled from the overall situation of bilateral relations so as not to affect the development of bilateral relations. Right now, the important thing is that this formally picks up the thread from the earlier meetings which led to disengagement at the borders. And that is what they mean when they are saying they appreciate what has happened so far in the last round. Next point, the two sides reaffirmed their commitment to continue seeking a fair, reasonable, and mutually acceptable package solution to the boundary. Now we are getting into the serious business aspect of this statement. The statement is from the Chinese side, it is not a joint statement. But statement from the Chinese side said that there was agreement on this. Now, the word I pick up from this, what caught my attention in this was the phrase package solution. So, package solution is something that India and China have talked about multiple times in the past, and I will take you through some of those possibilities which have been discussed. Package means you have a problem on the northern and western side, you have a problem on the northeastern side, right? You claim some territory that the Chinese have under their occupation right now, mainly Exai. The Chinese claim some territory which belongs to India, which is Arunachal Pradesh. So let there be a package solution. A package solution would imply a give and take. No country has used the expression give and take, but both countries have used the expression package solution. And I'm careful saying that both countries have used it. I will not jump the gun on this, and I will soon tell you why I say that both countries have used the expression or both countries have endorsed the expression. Because the same point 2, it is the key point. It goes on, and I read again. The two sides reaffirmed their commitment to continue seeking a fair, reasonable, and mutually acceptable package solution to the boundary issue in accordance with the political guidelines agreed upon by the special representatives of the two countries on resolving the boundary issue in 2005. That is the key piece of paper, 2005. I will take you back to that in just 2 minutes. And then it goes on to say, and to take positive measures to promote this process. So what this means is that the Chinese readout is telling you that they are willing, and the Indian side has agreed to go back and pick up the thread from 2005. The belief on the Indian side, and my belief too, is that since Xi Jinping came, China has walked back on all these earlier agreements and understandings, particularly the understanding of 2005 between the two special representatives. And the special representatives at that point were M.K. Narayanan from the Indian side, National Security Advisor, and Dai Biango from the Chinese side. And it looked like as if the Chinese side had resiled on all these commitments. In fact, that is something the former Foreign Secretary Sham Saran also said in a conversation with Snehesh Alex Philip, of which I will share a link with you. Please watch that video as well, because that was the feeling in India, and that led to a feeling of hurt and disappointment, and also a rethink in terms of how durable do you see the Chinese commitments. Do you also start worrying that, as happens with Pakistan, commitments made by Chinese governments will change with the change in the leader in China? So that led to a lot of distrust in India. Now the Chinese going back to 2005 is a very positive thing. I will take you back to the 2005 document in a minute. Then we come to point 3 from this Chinese readout, the latest Chinese readout, and it says the two sides assessed the border situation and agreed to further refine the management and control rules in the border area, strengthen the building of confidence building measures, and achieve sustainable peace and tranquility on the border. Now, it doesn't mention 1996, but these expressions, these phrases hark back to another agreement signed between India and China. And this, by the way, was signed when H.D. Deve Gowda was the Prime Minister in 1996, and that defined some of these confidence building measures, CBMs. And again, the Indian side had believed that over the last few years, these CBMs, which were already in place, they had now been given the go-by. For example, informing each other of the patrols, not interfering with each other's patrols, not using physical force. All of that changed 2020 onwards. And that is what led to these tensions. Point 4, the two sides agreed to continue to strengthen cross-border exchanges and cooperation, very significant, and promote the resumption of Indian pilgrims' pilgrimage to Tibet, China, cross-border river cooperation. That means negotiations begin on sharing of river waters and what to do with them, and Nathula border trade. Now, Nathula border trade is also something very significant, which takes you back to the Vajpayee era. And once again, I will talk about it because this is the journey that China and India have made in improving their relations. So, when Vajpayee and his Chinese counterpart, Wen Jiabao, met in 2003, two important things happened. One, they decided to set up a special representative mechanism, empowered special representative mechanism, that these two will talk and they'll be fully empowered by their principles. And second, while India committed itself to a one China policy and recognized Tibet as an autonomous region of China, the Chinese effectively recognized Sikkim as a part of India. We know Sikkim's merger with India is a complex story going back to the mid 70s. The Chinese had never accepted that. This time, by saying that they will now open trade at Nathula, so India will have its customs outpost, Chinese will have its customs outpost. One side is India, one side is China. So they recognized effectively Sikkim as being a part of India, which was the gain on the Indian side. For the Chinese side, you might say India had always accepted, Nehru had accepted Tibet as a part of China. So what's the big deal now? What did Vajpayee do? So diplomacy is about nuances. What had been said earlier was that India acknowledges Tibet as an autonomous region in China. Now, India recognized Tibet as an autonomous region of China. So the gain for China was from acknowledgement to recognition. The gain for India was through the border trade at Nathula, acknowledgement and recognition that Sikkim was a legitimate part of India, and the Chinese no longer questioned its merger in the mid 70s with India. And then, of course, it goes on to say that the two sides agreed to further strengthen the construction of special representatives meeting mechanism. That means next one will not take place after 5 years. In fact, the next one is now scheduled to take place next year, and this will be in Delhi because that's how it happens. It takes turns. Enhance cooperation and coordination in diplomatic and military negotiations, and require the India-China working mechanism for consultation and coordination on border affairs. Now, that mechanism about which we've been reading a lot since this standoff started in Ladakh, China-India Working Mechanism for Consultation and Coordination on Border Affairs, WMCC, which is civil and military. So it is headed by a joint secretary from the MEA, also includes military reps, and similarly from the Chinese side, it has diplomats and the military reps. They talk about these issues in more detail. So basically, once a political decision is made at, say, the SR levels or the ministers levels or the heads of state levels, this is the group that then negotiates the fine print and implements these decisions on the ground. And then it says, of course, that the two sides agreed to hold a new round of SR meetings, and that will be in India next year, as I mentioned to you. Now, I gave some particular emphasis, I placed some particular emphasis to the agreement in 2005, because that is what this Chinese readout is talking about, that the two sides effectively, I'm not paraphrasing it or maybe interpreting it, this means that the two sides have decided to go back and pick up the thread again from 2005, the 2005 agreement. This was an agreement published on April 11, 2005, published after a meeting between Dr. Manmohan Singh and his Chinese counterpart, Premier Wen Jiabao. And this said, among other things, this Vex is eloquent about the border situation and the need to settle it. It has a whole bunch of articles. In fact, it has all of 11 articles. Again, you will see this agreement on your screen. I'm sharing the links for all of these with you. So let's jump to Article 3. The articles before that are like Tanpura setting. So come to Article 3. It says both sides should, in the spirit of mutual respect and mutual understanding, make meaningful and mutually acceptable adjustments to their respective positions, which means both have to be flexible. Both can't say not 1 inch of land, right? This means that both sides should, in the spirit of mutual respect and mutual understanding, make meaningful and mutually acceptable adjustments to their respective positions. That means be flexible on the boundary question so as to arrive at a package settlement. That's very important, because package settlement is also an expression that the Chinese readout of last evening, that is Wednesday evening after the latest 23rd SR's meeting, also talks about. So the Chinese have also gone back to using the expression package settlement. From the Indian side, as an Indian partisan, I will see it as a positive, as a very good development because they are going back to this main issue. And then it says the boundary settlement must be final, covering all sectors of the India-China boundary. That's not one settlement here, one settlement here, one settlement there. Of course, India and China have to cover a very long distance because right now the two countries have not even demarcated their boundary. And I will tell you how much of a challenge it is because McMahon line, even if both sides were to fully accept McMahon line, it was then drawn with a thick nib pen. Now, a thick nib pen means if you use a pen, even of the kind that I use, this is a thick nib pen, right? A thick nib pen on a map that size over such a large territory. Just the width of your pen, of your nib, could be as much as 7 kilometers. How much territory would that be if one side claimed this pass or that pass as being its own? So there are issues there, and those have to be sorted. Then we go on to Article 4 of the 2005 agreement between the two prime ministers. I brought you to 2005 simply because the latest understanding takes you back to 2005. So Article 4 says the two sides will give due consideration to each other's strategic and reasonable interests and the principle of mutual and equal security. Article 5, the two sides will take into account, inter alia, that's besides other things, historical evidence, national sentiments, practical difficulties, and reasonable concerns and sensitivities of both sides and the actual state of border areas. So this is where on the Indian side, there's always this suspicion that Chinese change facts on the ground. And then they say, ये तो हमारा village बना हुआ है, this village is already there, so even if you claim this territory, how can you take it? Which takes us neatly into Article 6 of the 2005 Manmohan Singh Benjiabao Agreement. It says the boundary should be along well-defined and easily identifiable natural geographical features to be mutually agreed between the two sides. And that's where the argument over the watershed principle has gone on for a long time, that if the watershed is the principle, then should it be the high watershed? What watershed? There are multiple watersheds. And one country might say, but no, but I also own land, the other side of the watershed. So this agreement said that decision on the boundary should be such that your division should be geographically easy to identify, so there is less confusion in future. Then you come to Article 7, which to me is the most significant. And if this statement from the Chinese side now says, go back to the 2005 agreement, Article 7 to me is the most significant. It says, in reaching a boundary settlement, the two sides shall safeguard due interests of their settled populations in border areas, which means you will not disturb the status of any areas in the border where people are settled and staying. Tawang, for example, that's the most important example. You will not unsettle them, you will not destabilize them, and that was, in my understanding, the most important gain of the 2005 agreement. And it looked like after that, from the claims that came out of China, they went back to their maximalist positions. It had been looking as if the Chinese had gone back on that 2005 commitment of not disturbing settled populations. And now that they have brought back the 2005 agreement, and India in any case has always sworn by it, I would see it as major progress. However, what happens from now on, we will see, because Chinese can be unpredictable sometimes, as India has seen in the past. At the same time, when you see what looks like reasonably good news or better news, you don't dismiss it just because you are suspicious or because of negativity or because of your experiences in the past. Because what matters is what will happen going ahead. To that extent, this is a big new positive change. A logical question you will ask me is, how did India reach the 2005 agreement? A lot had happened before that. There was one in 1988 when Rajiv Gandhi had gone to Beijing and he had met Deng Xiaoping. That's when India and China were in a standoff situation at Sumdurongchu, which went on for 9 years, right? This was at the peak of Sumdurongchu crisis. So there was one agreement there. Then there was an agreement in 1993 when Narasimha Rao was in charge in India. Then 1996, Devagowda. Then the big one with Vajpayee in 2003. Then Manmohan Singh 2005. Again between Manmohan Singh and Benjiabao in 2012. That is when WMCC, that is the Working Mechanism for Cooperation and Coordination on Border Issues, That was set up, and then one in 2013 that was between Manmohan Singh and Li Keqiang, who was his counterpart as premier then. So I am sharing the links of all these agreements with you. And as I'm speaking also, you will see some of those rushing across your screens. These are all available or mostly available on the MEA's website and even the Chinese embassy's website in Delhi. So do check these out if you are academically inclined or if you are preparing for UPSC. I promised you a very special guest in this episode of CutTheClutter. So let me introduce to you Shailja Vajpayee, who I'm sure many of you know from her speaking, her teaching, and also from her writings. Shailja Vajpayee, my colleague, fellow traveler, and friend of many, many, many decades, is now also, besides being the reader's editor at ThePrint, she calls us out when we do something wrong. Plus, she's the one who reads your complaints and comments and alerts us to them and also responds to you in her column, her monthly column from the reader's editor. She is now also the dean of the Print School of Journalism, TPSJ. See the logo. The Print School of Journalism is now admitting students for its third batch. The teaching for the second batch is on. So graduates of the first batch are already out. You can see the picture. These are the many from the first batch who were able to come to Delhi to collect their diplomas or certificates physically. All the others got them by courier, and now teaching for the second batch is on, and this will conclude by mid-February. So at this point, Shailja and her team are admitting students for the third batch, and there the last date is somewhere in January?
Yes, early January.
Yeah. So Shailja, tell us more about the school. It's a venture that you've set up.
Yes.
What do you think about it? What's been the experience and what is the school like?
Thank you, Shekhar, and good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. So what's the idea behind the Print School of Journalism? As Shekhar and I have discussed, what we believed was that we should have a school that will foster good journalism, promote good journalism. And so here we're going to try, and we are already trying to share the values and principles of good journalism that we hope a whole new generation of aspiring journalists will learn from us and take the road forward in journalism. You might ask, and quite rightly, what makes us different from other schools? Well, I think it's very clear for us that we believe that the newsroom is the best classroom. And by that logic, the best teachers are experienced journalists. So when you look at the Print School of Journalism and when you go to our site, do go and you will find that the entire faculty consists of highly experienced journalists, right? This is not an academic exercise for us. We want to share with you all that they have learned on the ground as practicing journalists. And mind you, I think what's important here is that they are still practicing journalists. They're all working at the Print in one capacity or another. That's what makes them so special. And that is what will make what we are passing on to them special, right? Because everything is based on their experience. The skills and the knowledge they will hopefully impart to any of you who care to join us is based on everything that they do every day, right? They get up and do that every day. And those are the skills that we hope we can share with all of you.
And we do it online. We do it online over the weekends.
That's the other thing that I think makes us special, because we believe that the newsroom is the best classroom. How do we do that? One of the things is we keep this contract compact, right? So it's only on the weekend classes, live and interactive. And there's a reason to keep them live and interactive, because from day one, that means that you and the students get to ask questions, to meet those editors, and also to meet some very special experts that we also bring on each weekend for you to meet.
Well, sorry, go ahead.
No, so I was just going to explain how that widens the exposure we are able to give them in a way that I don't think others are able to do, because the kind of people we can bring on as experts are people that these people in the newsroom can easily access, which is not always possible at an academic level.
So one observation I will share with you, that's because because you put the gun on my head.
Yes.
I've also come and spoken to these classes, to each batch for a couple of hours for each batch. It's the attendance. This is, I never imagined these classes, any classes having almost 100% attendance.
That's right.
And so much engagement and
Yes.
so much interactivity.
Yes.
Even when one is speaking, I see those points running across
Right.
non-stop.
Right.
And sometimes there are things that I've said that I'm not quite sure I know.
And they
this,
remind you of it.
and they remind you of
Yes.
it, or somebody
Or
says,
correct you.
oh, this is like this, or
That's
they
right.
correct. So these
Yes.
are very smart people.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit more, or tell the viewers also a little bit more about these teachers, these faculty who've been teaching
So,
here.
you know, what can I say to you? They're the best and the brightest in a sense. They're all working at the print. And, you know, the kind of journalism they're practicing at the print is what they will give you. So we have our senior editors like Rama Lakshmi, opinion editor and editor ground reports, DK Singh, editor politics, Nishit, operations, news operations, Janki, Dave, in charge of the video team. These are all, and there are many more, Sharad Raghavan on economics, you know. I mean, it's an absolute delight to attend his classes, Shekhar. I don't know anything about economics, and I can tell you I learned a great deal. Because the thing is, and this is important for you all to understand, because they're journalists, they know that the most important thing that they have to do is to communicate simply and well, because the audience could be so wide-ranging, right?
And also the photo editor that we have.
Yes, Praveen Jain, I think the world's, I mean, India's certainly best photojournalist is now out there also with a whole new course that he does. So the course is divided into 7 little capsules. The first one is obviously a very big part of the course is obviously based on the fundamental skills of journalism, which are taken by the senior journalists like Rama Lakshmi, like Nishit Upadhyay, like Janki Dave, and I'll also be there. And that's when we rope in Shekhar also, because no one, you know, can tell you more about his experiences than he can. And then we have 6 other specialized capsules, because we want to open this up to you as much as possible. You may not only want to acquire the skills, you may want to know how to report on legal journalism. National security, a huge interest amongst our readers, right? And again, as Shekhar said, very knowledgeable people have joined our courses, right? And, you know, they are so engaged with these things that they can't wait. I'm being asked, when will Praveen Swami come on? When is Snehesh Alex Phillips' class, right? So we have strategic affairs, we have economics, and we have another one which is my personal favorite because I'm so interested in health and science. And of course, how can I forget politics to round everything off? So,
and there we have the Dada himself, DK Singh.
DK Singh, I think you may have seen him on Politically Correct, which is of course very politically incorrect, but never mind, we're not meant to say that. But he is, he's just so full of anecdotes. That's the other thing, Shekhar. I think that's working with all of them, is that these journalists come and they talk to you about their anecdotal evidence. Now that's very important, because they won't only teach you how to find a story, write a story, source information, verify information, and write a story, but they will give you anecdotal information in a sense that you will get inside their heads or into their skin and take that journey through a story with them.
You know, Shalja, what you call anecdotal, we reporters call that lived experiences.
I see, okay. All right. So you can see
stories from lived experiences. Also, we have a lot of outside experts. These are mostly people who are involved with us as columnists or panelists, but also some who just do it for love.
We've had like General Naravne has been very generous with his time. The Delhi commissioner, police commissioner, I beg your pardon, came. And that was, you know, I wasn't expecting that. That was a real surprise when we got him. We've had Yogendra Yadav come to us. We've had, this time we're going to have Gagandeep Khan, Dr. Gagandeep Khan come to us. So yes, we try and get real good, high quality experts for you in every field so that they can share their knowledge, which is as important in some ways for you to know as what these journalists report.
And now we also have in our in-house mix Dr. Swasti Rao.
Well, yes, this is a great joy for you who maybe join us in the third cohort, where Dr. Swasti Rao will be part of that security team. I have yet to discuss with her, but I hope she'll do a whole capsule almost by herself. We'll try and work on that. And I also wanted to expand the photography and visual arts one. So we are looking forward to doing some of that too.
So as we are talking, you might be also seeing a lot of visuals running on your screen. Many of these are students in class. Some of these are students now serving out their internship period.
Shekhar, I should
in our
explain that
newsroom.
to them. So, as a part of our belief in the newsroom is the classroom, we are also offering internships
As part of this,
as part of the
course.
course. As
And
part of
you know
course.
what? My own understanding is, I went to a journalism school for a year. In the course of time, journalism schools have become 2 years now.
Yeah,
2 year
3,
diploma,
4
2 year
years
degree,
now.
4 years
4-year
now.
BA
Right?
graduates.
That's too much time spent learning the theory of journalism. You can learn the theory and the basics of journalism very quickly, even in the course of a sharp 3-month regimen that Shelja has designed. You don't need to spend more time and, frankly, a lot more money. You can imagine how much money does it cost to go to a university to do a 1 year journalism course, and now 2 years,
Yes.
and doing undergrad for 3 years,
Well,
and then
up to 4
postgrad for
now.
2 years.
Yeah.
If you do that, frankly, I would say this is too much time spent studying journalism. Because once you learn the basics, then the rest you learn in the newsroom.
Yes, absolutely.
And what better way of learning the basics than from those who are actually living out their lives from very lively newsrooms? Because almost anybody who's now an editor at ThePrint has loads of experience.
At least a decade, and many have much more.
And since we are only 7 years old, you can presume that they've all worked in other newsrooms and made a name for themselves.
Yes.
So once again, it's a suggestion from me. If you want to learn journalism, you don't have to spend so much money and so much time and take time off from whatever you're doing. You can learn it while you keep doing whatever you are doing. And the teachers are there and the dean is in front of you. So you will see all the links on our screen and also with the description of this video. You can go there and enroll. It's a little bit competitive because we take the best students, but I'm sure each one of you is the best. So please go ahead. You will love it.
Thank you, and I hope to see some of you there. Bye-bye.